SBSparts.com carries all air raid products for the major UTV models. Welcome to SBS Parts Air Raid Intake and Throttle Body Spacer install on the Jeep Wrangler JK. The first step in the install is the detachment of the battery cables. To install the new throttle spacer, first detach the hose clamp. Once both hose clamps are removed, detach the air intake temperature sensor wire connector. Remove the stock air intake and then begin removing the throttle body bolts. You may need a socket extension to remove the stock throttle body. Once all 4 throttle body bolts are removed, the throttle body should come off pretty easily. The throttle body spacer mounts right up against the intake manifold. You can see the arrow pointing to where the manifold is. The intake gasket goes on the outside. Install the 4 hex bolts that came with the spacer through both the throttle body and the spacer. Now that we've installed the throttle body spacer, we can begin the air intake installation by removing the clips from the stock air box. Next, remove the breather hose from the air intake box. This is the stock air box removed from the vehicle. You can see on the back the 3 prongs that hold it secure in the engine compartment. Remove these rubber grommets that held the stock airbox in place. They'll be replaced with air raid units later. Remove this bolt. It is located right next to the fuse box. Remove this bolt located just underneath the radiator cap. Place these grommets that are provided with the air raid intake kit where the old grommets were. They take a little pushing, but they will get in. Bolt this bracket supported by air raid into the hole underneath the radiator cap where you had removed the bolt before. The air raid airbox is going to come in 2 separate pieces, just bolts together using a couple of small bolts and small nuts. It's pretty self-explanatory. The air raid airbox will drop right into place right through those 2 rubber grommets. Air raid calls these button bolts. They hold the side of the airbox closest to the fender in place. Reinstall the bolt next to the fuse box that was removed earlier in the installation. Use another one of the provided button head bolts to secure the airbox to the bracket that we installed underneath the radiator cap. Before you install the air raid intake, install this grommet in the side for the breather temperature sensor. Install the hose clamps on this part of the air intake hose. And then install that air intake hose onto the intake body itself. And this is the air intake hose assembly mounted to the throttle body. Be aware we initially had to remove this bolt to pull back the airbox to fit the air intake assembly. Slide the hose clamps over the air intake against the throttle body and tighten down. Use the remaining 2 button bolts to tighten the air intake to the airbox. You can see the upper one here and the lower one down here. The air raid air filter slips into place without too much finagling and bolts in using the last 2 button bolts. Don't forget to tighten down the hose clamp where the air filter meets the airbox. Don't forget to reattach the air temperature sensor on the other side of the intake, and thank you for watching the video.